In today's lecture, I want to talk about two things you need to understand before you even start drawing anything. One is about the idea that drawing isn't putting pencil to paper. It's about learning how to see, learning how to analyze an object, to understand its context, its mode, its pose, before you even start to make your marks. When you're looking at an object, you need to look at the whole and start by thinking of a frame in the context of the whole object. You start loose and work towards detail. But you can't do that well unless you really start looking. I imagine just about every one of you has been driving down the road and all of a sudden realized that you don't remember the last 2 or 3 miles. Usually this is on a road that you've driven dozens of times. And you didn't run off the road, you didn't cause an accident, you didn't hit a ditch, because in the back of your mind you had always isolated where all the objects, obstructions, and lane changes were from experience. As children, we learn with our 5 senses: taste, touch, smell, sound, and sight. And as we categorize the world, break it up into the objects and recognize the different things, we stop seeing them. We start categorizing them by type so that we don't really look at the details. As children, we learn to see with our 5 senses. Senses of taste, touch, smell, sound, and sight. As we grow up, we look at objects and we start categorizing them. We start recognizing that a chair, for example, is basically a seat, a back, and 4 legs. And that there are variations of that which we note when we're younger, but as we get older, we just sit there and just put everything into a category called chair. We know, for example, that this chair with a slotted back is one type of chair. And that a chair built like this with single tubes for the legs is also a chair, but also a big stuffed chair like this will fit the same description. But we don't notice the difference when we talk about chair. What we've done is make a compression. We've categorized the world. We've done what an awful lot of the compression programs that you use in your computer do. They use an algorithm to take the things that get repeated over and over again and essentially store them in one place. And if there's anything exceptional, then that is noted as something separate. That's what we do with the world. We stop seeing, essentially. Now, what we need to do when we start learning how to draw is to start seeing again. Now, many of you have probably seen pictures like this. If you look at it in one way, if you just look at the black shape, it's essentially a vase or an urn. But if you were to take a look at it in another way, focus your attention and change, what you see instead are 2 profiles. Both the silhouettes exist. It's not that one is correct and the other isn't. It's just that you changed the way you looked at things. It's how we trick ourselves. Another example is the use of negative space. You can look at an object, and if you look at the area around it, you'll see the shape of a chair But the chair is not what's drawn. What's drawn are the black spaces or the blank spaces around the chair. If you were to take a look at the contour drawing, you'd know that that was a chair. But even just in black and white like that, you know what you're looking at. When you start to draw, most important thing is just take your time and just look. It's very important to think about what you're doing before you actually do it. To analyze the shape, the weight, the volume, the action, the pose. And so what you do is, if you can, turn it around. Look at it in different ways. Walk around it, whatever it is. Think about what shapes you're seeing. Because an awful lot of times, there are shapes that you can recognize that help you build piece by piece what you're looking at. Now, when you're looking at it, analyze how it relates to the area around it. What is it that you see? If it's on a table, for example, how much of the table do you see? What parts of the table? What shapes are around that? Before you start any drawing, take the time to look at an object. Take your time to look around it, look at its shapes, look at what makes it unique, how it relates to the area around it. Look for its negative spaces. For example, this area in here. Turn it upside down if you can pick it up. Walk around it if you can't. Try to imagine it from different angles and really, really look closely at it. If you want to reduce some of the detail, when you look at it, squint. I know it sounds funny to sit there and squint as you're drawing and when we're talking about seeing, but by squinting, it simplifies the shapes, it simplifies the values, and eliminates a lot of the detail. You can look at the things that are important. Now, when you start a drawing, after you've evaluated it, after you've looked at it, after you've got a sense of what the object is, you need to remember two things. One is that you're drawing the entire object. To take your time and worry about the detail of the wheel would lose everything else. Nothing would be in proportion, nothing would fit. Let me show you how that would work. If you were to draw this car, you'd want to look at it and see it as a block, a shape of some kind. We know that basically this would fit inside a cube. So we've created the box that this will fit in. Then we start looking at the curves that it comes with. You know that the cab curves like this and then drops down like this. We know that it's got dimension, it's got depth, so we want to make a point of capturing that space in there. Then we drop it back in perspective. Note the window, which has a very interesting shape. And we're seeing the whole thing. We can rough in the wheels. And now we have a place to start. It's here where we can sit there and start going in and working up detail.